Hey, this is Scarf Darby Bonsai. If you could put together any camera kit at the moment from any manufacturer, what would be in there? I'm curious about that. I made a list for myself. I'm going to go over my ideal current camera kit from all the manufacturers. I picked Sony at the moment, A7 III based, 2 different bodies for the A7 III, so in professional situations I want a backup or 2 cameras or a dual camera strap. I like doing that. Maybe 3 actually, but 2 just to start off, 1 body only, and then also 1 with the kit lens. The kit lens is good just to have as a backup. Of course, you want to have extra batteries. I always put that in there. They're a little pricey for this camera, but the batteries are pretty solid, so good match for that. And then we've got the VG C3EM battery grip, the official one. I know there's a lot of third-party options, but for the most part, if I'm doing something in a professional sense, of course I do the YouTube videos, but I would probably try to use this kit for other situations. I want a standard OEM battery grip. Probably not 2 of them, 1 is probably sufficient, so just 1 of those. I would get a camera cage for situations where I want to rig it up. It is the SmallRig 2087. It looks pretty nice, lots of ways to connect things. I do have one for the Canon EOS M50, it's pretty useful. Let's get into lenses. The Sony FE 135mm f1.8 lens. Now there is a Sigma version that's a lot cheaper. I'd consider that as well, but I would tend to go with the OEM stuff if I could and price wasn't an issue. 135mm is one of my ideal focal lengths for portrait work in those situations. I just really like that one on full frame. Then we've got the Sony 70-200 f4. In this case, I prefer the f4 versions because they're smaller. I don't really need 2.8 in a lot of situations. I just tend to go for f4 on those nice zoom lenses. Having that range is good, and in this situation, f4 is just fine for me personally. To get a lot of extra range, I'd get the 100 to 400mm f4.5 to 5.6 GM OSS Lens. Just get the extra range, and then I'm going to mention an APS-C camera on this, and I'll probably use it with that as well if I wanted to, so even just a little bit more resolution with that crop. Then we've got the Sony FE 55mm f1.8 ZA lens. I've used the cheapo 50mm on the Sony E-mount. I wasn't a fan of it. Slow autofocus and just didn't seem like a good value for what it is, even though it's cheaper. Would try to get this lens instead. It just seems a lot better, the reviews and everything related to that. But a standard 50 around 50mm is a definite must in my case. Another lens, the FE 90mm f2.8 macro lens from Sony. A lot of the stuff that I do with video even is I get really close-up shots of equipment. Having a dedicated macro lens is very nice. With 90mm, you get a little bit more distance to deal with things, working distance, than something like a 50 or 35 macro. So 90 in this case seems pretty good. And of course you could use that lens for portraits or whatever else. So here I veer off a little bit with the Tamron 28mm to 75mm f2.8 Di3 RXD lens. Now, first off, it was not ideal because there was some issues with focusing, but they fixed that in firmware. I would expect it to continue like that. It just seems like a good value. Similar to that, the Tamron 17-28mm f2.8 RXD is going to come out pretty soon. I'd probably get that paired with the other Tamron. Here's a fun lens, the Rokinon AF 35mm f2.8 FE lens. It's small, it's compact, 35mm, and it just seems like a fun lens to try. The main camera for my video work would actually be the Sony a6400, at least one of them, maybe 2 of them, because it does have that flip-up screen. It's very convenient. I don't really care that it blocks the hot shoe. There's so many options to deal with that. You can get a bracket to move it over if you want to put that microphone, or just get a full camera cage. Looking forward, I would probably go for whatever is going to replace the a6500 with the in-body shake reduction. I'm assuming it's going to be quite a bit better than a6400, maybe even a new sensor. So in the future, I'd probably change that up to use it instead of the a6400, but at the moment, A6400 is a good value for video stuff. Another thing to consider is that the batteries are different between the A7 III and the A6400. Hopefully the A6500 replacement will have the newer, better batteries. The one APS-C lens that I would get for this kit is the 10 to 18mm OSS F4 lens, good for vlogging situations. It has the optical stabilization. So with the A6400 as it is, you want some type of optical stabilization to deal with that when you're walking in situations where shake is an issue. As a B-roll camera, as an extra camera, I would get the RX0 Mark II. As that little flip-up screen, it's waterproof, it just has a lot of versatility to it, even though the autofocus is kind of wonky, but I think it would work nicely for a lot of situations where I need that camera out filming myself, taking photos. It would be really useful, it's compact, looks pretty nice. Of course it is expensive, and I'm not considering price here, so. Moving on to photographic gear that I would want to get, I would go Godox. So with that, we would get the X Pro S triggers, the AD200 flash. They look pretty powerful. I haven't personally used them, but versatile, powerful, and it has its own battery, but I would definitely get quite a few extras of that. I don't really like dealing with AA batteries, so with the flash that I have, I really haven't used them that much lately because it's just the hassle of batteries, and then I don't want to spend any money at the moment to buy a battery pack, but even if I did buy the battery pack that you can get for the TT600 flash that I have, it's just an added hassle and it's separate. So with a flash like the AD200, it just is all-inclusive and it looks really nice. Another flash that I'll get is the TT350S. It's very compact. It does use the AA batteries, but only 2. And really the size is the biggest thing with this, so you can use it in the background or some other situations, put it right on the camera because you can do some TTL stuff with that. It's just nice and small, looks pretty good. I'm really fine with SD cards, so in this case, and it's just pretty simple, I would get higher end cards, and definitely I would go multiple brands. I really don't want to buy a big group of the same brand of card because that's really a big risk if you're considering if one breaks out of that batch, chances are the other ones are not great as well. So here I would break the Sony trend, I would get a Ricoh GR3 for my compact carry everywhere camera. It's very small, has an APS-C sensor, it has the shake reduction inside, 28mm equivalent lens. It just seems like a really great take everywhere camera. So with the tripods, I'm just going to go with Manfrotto in this case. There's so many other brands, but just something that looks pretty decent. I haven't personally used these, but we got the MT190X3 tripod. It looks really nice. Of course, it's not cheap. The second tripod, we have the Manfrotto B-Free Live carbon fiber tripod with a video head. It is smaller, more compact than the other one. Just seems like a good one for taking out and using in the field. With microphones, the Rode Video Micro, probably get multiples of that, one for indoors use in the studio situation, one for outside, or a few for outside with the vlogging stuff. So with the studio microphone, I'm really not sure. I haven't had a lot of experience, but I've seen some people use the Shure SM7B. It seems like a really solid microphone. Of course, it's not cheap, but we're not considering price here, so probably get one of those, try it out, and see if it works well. In a lot of situations when you're recording audio and video, you can't be right next to the camera, so I would want some type of recorder with a lavalier microphone. For a recorder with a lapel mic, I would get the Tascam DR10L. It looks really nice. It does a safety recording, so you have a lower dB level on the second track, and the lavalier I assume is pretty decent as well. For light stands, I would get the Manfrotto 5001B. It's a nice travel light stand. It of course is not super small, but it's small enough that you can easily take a few of them with you if you have to in a bag, and it just probably works really well because it folds the legs upwards. I have similar ones. Of course, they're not actually the Manfrotto version, but I expect that one to be even better than the ones that I have of a similar design. Definitely I would change up the A6400 for a camera that has the same battery as the A7 III. Besides that, I think it's a pretty solid overall kit. Hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to talk about the type of kit you would go for. Now this is just the Sony one in my case. I would definitely make a Fuji one or whatever other brand, but just in this specific case, go Sony this time. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Scott Photography Bonsai. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. Likes and shares help out a lot as well. Thanks.